Peace and blessings. I am Regina, and welcome to my happy place, Diva G's Reborns. I've changed my setup slightly. I hope that this angle helps with a over, a overhead view of what I am doing. Um, Please do let me know in the comments if this setup is a little bit, where you can see overhead a little bit better. I would like to also encourage you to please do like, comment, subscribe, and share the channel. Please do be certain that you take a look at our community posts as well as our shorts and our various playlists. We also have a number of dolls that are available for purchase. You can take a look and see what we have available in our community post as well as in our shorts. We are also on reborns.com as well as eBay. The links for those various um, areas will be listed, or you can also just simply contact me directly and we can arrange for either convenient layaway or immediate purchase. So, once again, please do like, comment, subscribe, and share so everyone can see what we're doing here at Diva G's Reborns, my happy place. Today, I wanted to discuss varnish. We will be varnishing our baby Maggie. Okay, what I am using is Americana decor. This is DecoArt. It is soft touch varnish. Now, this also provides UV protection, and it gives a soft touch to the skin that is going to be on our reborn dolls. Now, to provide some texture to the dolls, what I like to do is I like to take one of the firm cosmetic wedges and just pull it apart. And as you can see, that gives some texture, okay, onto the sponge. Okay, and that, believe it or not, gives somewhat of a skin um, feel to the dolls. Now, what I also like to do is I also like to take these little sponges. They have similar texture, but it's more even. Okay, so I will show you the areas that I like to use this. And then there are certain areas on the doll that I like to just use the regular cosmetic wedge, just the regular without pulling it apart so that it is smooth. Okay. And in preparation, I also like to have my pointed Q-tips as well as my, let me get a few out, toothpicks. And as I begin to use these, I will explain the significance of why I use them in the way in which that I do. I also wanted to give a little bit of an update. As many of you know who follow the channel, you know that I have been commissioned by Karen of Making Reborn Dolls with Karen to paint her a melanated baby boy, Maddox. And she mailed the kit and we have a snowstorm here on the East Coast. So this kit that was expected, oh, I don't know, maybe a week ago, is still kind of tied up in transit with the post office and navigating through the weather. Now, although the streets are clear here, I guess because of the storm, at a certain point, there was a little bit of a delay with the delivery. So I'm looking forward to receiving this package really soon in good condition. This is one of the reasons that I have not begun actually painting any other dolls, because I wanted to have Baby Maddox as our next series, to do a little bit of a, I don't know if I would, maybe just like a paint along or paint with me or watch me paint. I don't know what the title is. But yes, so that's what's actually going on with our commissioned Baby Maddox. I did speak with the post office on today. Today is Saturday, and it says that it was received, um, and it is at the distribution center. Now, the distribution center is not my post office, but it is where the package is, and that is about mm, by car, maybe 20-30 minutes from my home, and then, or from the to the post office. So, with it being Saturday, I don't know that the package will come on today because it has to get to my post office. They have to process it. They have to do all that they do. And I don't know that it would be out to me um, with the normal, the normal time that they make deliveries. Because at this point, it's like 10, a little bit after 10 a.m. So I don't know that it would come on today. However, again, we're just trying to give a little bit of an estimate because I don't have the exact update. But I'm hoping that it will be here early next week. Um, and then we can begin with our baby Maddox. Yeah, so um, thank you so much for your patience with that bit of an update. Now, for the DecoArt varnish, it can look a little scary because it's white. And you may think, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? It's white. What's going to happen? Is it going to dry white on my doll? And the answer to that is no, it does not dry white. It dries clear. Now, what I want to do is put 2 layers on the doll. And remember, our baby Maggie has a torso as well. So we will be also applying to her torso. Now, what I will do is I'm going to take my convenient throwaway brushes and stir the paint. Now, you can put the paint in another container, a small portion that you feel you would be using. You could do that. Um, or you could take it and put it in a container and put a small amount of the water combination, meaning the distilled water, along with the wetting agent. We can do that. So there are different options, or you can use it straight. Now, what I like to do to give me some time to work, I do like to add the wetting agent to it so that I have a little bit of time to kind of work with, um, the product. So let me just get the small container that I want to use. Okay, we are back, and I have my small little bowl that I can mix the paint and add the distilled water. And the distilled water combination is my distilled water along with our, let me show you, our golden wetting aid. This is really, really good. So these two together, the distilled water, and this item works really, really well. Now, you don't need that much of the wetting aid. You only need a tiny bit in comparison to the distilled water. It's like a 1 to 10%. So you would use 99% of distilled water and only 10% of wetting agent. So as an example, if I put this much distilled water in, the rest would be the wetting agent. So that would be like a 1 to 10%. So I don't need to mix any right now because I will not need that much for what we will be doing. But I do want to show you how I mix it. Now, what I will do is my brush that I will be painting with, I'm going to stick that in some distilled water so the bristles can be nice and moist. And then I will take it out and it will make it where the brushes pick up the product easily. Now I have I have these baby spoons that I like to sometimes use. These baby spoons, actually I purchased them a while back because many of you know I talk about my cat Muffin. So I had purchased this for my Muffin because sometimes I actually cook his food. So with that being said, I would oftentimes just kind of, you know, portion out a little bit of whatever it is and use this. I know. So I'm just gonna take maybe 3 spoons of this. I'm estimating because I'm looking at the amount of surface that I need to cover. So, and then I will be adding a little bit of the distilled water. And we do want thin layers. And maybe I'll do 4. And we do want nice thin layers. And because it's always good to go thin and then you can, add more as you need. Okay, so water. So this is the consistency that it comes out initially. You see, it comes out kind of like it's very liquid. It's as liquid as what, skim milk, I guess. Okay, that's the consistency. Now, I'm going to just add a little bit of the distilled water wetting agent solution. And that's just to give me a bit of time to work with on the kit. Okay, so I'm just going to take a few drops, not much, just a pretty good squirt. Okay, and then I'll mix that in. Now again, you can most definitely use this straight out of the jar, out of the container. Okay. I like the consistency, the feel that this gives, because it gives the doll's skin a soft feel. Um and you can add some texture, meaning when we use the sponges that are like this, okay, or if you were to go across the entire kit with a sponge like this, it does give some texture. Now, if I were to refrigerate this to make it a little firm, um, it would allow for even more of a texture. Now, um we did our doll and we did provide some texture with our Liquitex Ultra Matte Gel, because we did go across, her with our, sponges that we created texture with. Now, what I will do, like I said, I moisten the brush with a little bit of water. Okay, so it makes the bristles so nice and soft, and they will pick up the paint. Now, what I like to do is I like to really use the smaller brush. I do have the larger brushes that are available to me, but I like to use the smaller brushes so that I can get into all of the nooks and crannies and do what it is that I feel, the way I would like it to be. So I'm just going to look over the limbs just to be sure that there isn't anything on that should not be. And if I see something, what I will do is, like, I see a small little white spot here. Okay, so I'm taking that off. Anywhere I see something that I don't believe it's supposed to be there, I am taking it off. So, yeah. Now I do have a brush that sometimes I actually do use to brush over the dolls with. Let's see if I can get it. I have my little different setup now. So this is the first video that I'm making with the new setup. So yeah. So this is the brush. It's a makeup brush, and it's a very fluffy, fluffy, fluffy makeup brush. And, I can go ahead and wipe, her off with this. If just in the event that there's any dust or anything on her, I can get it off. Okay, because anything at this point that's on the kit and we put the varnish on top is forever there. So we have to be certain that whatever we put on the kit now, that we actually want it. So what I will do is I'm going to stir it up anyway, a little bit more. And then I'm going to push it up on the side of my bowl just to kind of get a little bit more of the just so that there's very little on the brush. And then I'm going to go across her fingers. Okay. Okay. I'm focusing on the fingers. the underside and the top. I'm focusing the fingers, toes, the nose, the ears receive a lot more wear and tear because of the way we may interact with the dolls, dressing them, you know, changing their clothes or, you know, what have you. So you pay particular attention to everywhere that you are applying the varnish, but definitely in those areas. And you want to be certain that there isn't anything pooling in the creases. So the way that I'm swiping the brush removes anything that might be in the creases, that might be considered excess. Okay, so I have a lot of time that I'm able to work with this nice medium. Okay. And then I'm going to pounce it. Now the inside of the hand, the inside of the fingers, um, they have a more smoother texture. They don't have that um, actual texture feel, okay, that we would see on possibly the rest of the limbs. Okay. If you feel touch yourself, you'll see that as well. Now, one of the things that I do like to do is I'll take a little bit of the varnish, go across the tips, right? And then I'll take this sponge that has the even holes, and then I'll go across the tips, and that kind of gives the finger almost like finger prints. You know how you look at your fingers or you could touch them and they feel a certain way, slightly different? Well, that's what that does. Okay, so I'm going to press it here so that I take off any excess. Now I want to make sure that the nails, I don't have any buildup around the nails. Yeah, I do. I take my time. You know, I do. I take my time. And then I'll just go across nicely, just like I'm polishing the nail. Now I will go inside the palm itself. And the reason I like to use 2 or maybe even 3 layers of the varnish, because yes, it provides that protection that we're seeking, and it also helps that if we've missed any areas, that the second and or the third pass will get those, you know, will fill it in. So yeah, so that's part of the reason, you know, the rationale for doing it that way. Okay. Now again, the palm of the hand tends to be a little bit smoother than the rest of the skin. So I'm just going to take the smooth part of a cosmetic wedge. I'm noticing that I see a little bit of something there, so I'm going to make sure to get that off. And you want to be mindful, you don't want pooling anywhere, because if you get pooling, It's not going to look nice on the kit. So you're mindful of everywhere that there is, you know, a crease, like in between the thumb, I see quite a bit of, you know, varnish. So I'm going to be sure to clean that up, from in there. Okay, try to get in there with the wedge. And I can also make a little bit of a, like I said, what we said would be considered a thumbprint. So we can do that on this thumb here. And of course, adding, you know, the additional texture and thumbprints or fingerprints, that's totally optional. The part that is, you know, um, that you need to do is to make sure that you varnish the kit. Now, in air dry paint, varnish and priming are not interchangeable. What you use to prime with will not effectively varnish your kit. Okay, so and I went over the difference in another video, but I'm just going to make mention of that again now. What we use, or what I use to prime my kit, I like to use latex ultra matte gel along with the water solution. Okay, and what that does is it primes the kit to be able to take the paint and you know, so, and I usually will do maybe two or three layers of that, and that helps again to allow the kit to take the paint more easily. And that also is white and it dries clear. And it does provide some UV protection. However, it will not, it's not a varnish. You know, you can use that to prime the kit, or after you've painted, you can use that same mixture to seal the kit. However, it's important that you then allow it to dry and then go ahead with varnishing. And I'm going to use the sponge that has some texture to it as I'm going across the back of the hand. Okay, because I would think that it may have a little bit of texture there. Now the Liquitex Ultra Matte Gel, along with the wetting mediums, the wetting agent, and um, the wetting agent and the distilled water, that takes it will be dry in about 30 minutes or so. However, it takes 24 to 48 hours for it to cure. So for it to fully cure. So you can work with it. However, it takes that amount of time to cure. And then the varnish, it takes about 72 hours for it to cure. So I will be waiting that amount of time before I will be able to root our baby. So I'll have to wait, patiently wait to be able to root her. Now, could I begin to root her after 24 hours or something like that? I could, but since I would be having her face in the pillow and everything like that, I would not take that chance because there's a possibility that, you know, she could get a rub or something in that in the varnish. So, although theoretically you could paint a doll completely in one day, however, between the varnishing and all of that, that adds on another week or so, and then depending on how long it takes you to root, you add that in, and then after you root the doll, you have to seal the hair inside the doll head. So that takes time for it to dry, and you have to figure out what medium, what are you going to use to seal the hair inside, and that has to dry. So, and that will take, depending on the medium, that may take 24 hours, 48 hours, or, depending on what it is that you're going to use to seal the head. And, seal the hair inside. So, yeah, so after you've sealed the head inside, you want to be sure that it's fully dry or cured, fully dry and cured before you begin to stuff the doll. Because if you begin to try to stuff the doll and the doll head and it's not dry, you'll then begin to move the product around in the head, and you're not going to like that. So, yeah. And when you're putting in the polyfill and everything, it will start sticking and you won't be able to move it the way you want. And, you're trying to, and then the stocking will be stuck and all of those different things. And if you're using anything to weight the head, then that, stocking with the weighting material can get stuck as well. And then, so yeah, patience is a virtue. After you've spent all of the time painting a beautiful baby, then, it's important to take the time to properly varnish and to wait for the doll to cure. And then, again, like I said, waiting for the head inside the head to fully dry before you stuff the doll. And then you're able to go right on ahead and after, the prescribed time, you can then put the doll on the body. But if you try to do anything too soon, things will not go well. You'll have parts that will be sticking, the limbs won't turn because they'll be stuck because, all kinds of different things. So you want to be sure that you're waiting the prescribed period of time. Like we put on the Aleen's paper glaze and, I waited, time before before we're doing the varnish, right? Although I'm not touching the paper glaze, I waited, a couple of days before I even begun to interact with the kit. Because although I'm not putting anything on top of the paper glaze, if you see, I'm holding and touching the flange, which is where we put the Aleen's paper glaze and it's nicely shiny and everything like that. So I like to do things in stages and really take my time with it. Yeah, so to make sure that I don't have any buildup in here in the creases or anywhere. Yeah, so that's the thing. It's important. Patience is a virtue. Patience is a virtue. So let's see, I'm looking. at her, and I don't see anything, but just for safety reasons, added precaution, I'm just going to brush her off. I don't see anything on her though, which is great. Let me put this over here. So I am stirring it up. Now you see her hand inside. Okay, you see she has these little crevices and everything like that. So I want to be careful that I don't, you know, get some pooling in there. So what I'm going to do is first, just to kind of get some of the varnish off, I'm just going to kind of go around her fingers first. A little bit with the fingers before I go into the palm. That way, even though I tried to get a certain amount off the brush already, um, it's kind of hard, difficult to get as much off as you would like so that you can put an ultra thin layer on around that palm. So I'm kind of going around and doing this and everything, being mindful of any pooling. Oh, you can't see me. Okay. I think you can see now. Okay. Okay. And then I'm going to pounce. Okay. And this again is adding some texture. Some texture. And again, making sure there's no pooling. Now, without adding anything onto the brush, I'm going anything extra onto the brush. What I'm doing is I'm going around the palm and I'm swiping outwardly and down so that would um, pull the varnish away from, out of the creases. So I'm going that way. So we would hope that we don't have pooling. Okay. So we're just kind of going across this way and that way. That way on the thumb. And for the palm, like I said, I think I, want it to be a bit smooth. So I'm pouncing with the smooth cosmetic wedge. And the nails will be smooth too. And I'm looking in between the fingers. And so there's a little bit of in between the fingers, so I want to get that out. So I am taking the Q-tip and getting it out carefully. Okay. Looking all around to try to be certain that there isn't any area that has any buildup. You think about the longevity of the doll. These are things that all make a difference, taking the time, to do it. I love this hand. I love you see the veins ever so slightly underneath? Ever so slightly, but you can see them. And then I'm going ahead on the back of the hand. where I've not already varnished. Okay, so I will meet where I did varnish, about where I think it is. Okay, in the back of the hand, I think I want some bit of texture. So yeah, so I'm gonna pounce with the cosmetic wedge that has some of the texture and clean off anything extra. And be sure that I'm looking, no buildup. Okay, great. Stir up the varnish, and then we're gonna go across her arm so that we can get the area. I like to do the varnish in sections so that I can pay attention to where I've gone and, you know, like that. And to try to get in the nooks and the crannies and to try to ensure that there isn't any buildup, there isn't any flakes of anything that ought not be there. Yeah, so that's the thing. Now the thing with the varnish and using the wedge like this, if you go over the area that you've already gone over, it will kind of change the texture a little bit. And you can see on the doll, so you would like to also make sure that you're kind of going around in a bit of a circle so that, you know, that you're pouncing in a circle so that you're not going to have what appears to be squares on the doll, right? Okay. And again, like I said, it goes on white, but it dries clear. So, and then once you see that it's gone clear, it's dry, but again, it takes, you know, up to that 72 hours for it to be fully cured. Yes, that's the thing. Some people like dolls that are highly textured. Some people prefer light texture. Some people don't want any texture. You know, you just have to figure out what it is that you like. Now, I know my reborn dolls that I've collected, the artists varnished them, you know, very well, painted them very well, and they feel smooth. Now, the first doll that I reborned, I made her highly textured. So she feels, you know, really, really textured. And, you know, and that's fine. Then the next doll that I made, I see a little bit of, what did I just, okay, here. The next doll that I made, what I did was I didn't put the Liquitex in the refrigerator as long, and you know I did it just a little bit different. So she's not as she's textured, but she doesn't feel quite that firm. So she doesn't. Her texture isn't quite that coarse, I should say. And then the dolls that I've made after her that you've seen me do on camera, I'm just seeing a little piece of hair that you've seen me do on camera, they have been textured where, you know, they feel like skin. And yeah. So I think I went all over her, everywhere. Yeah. And then we will go with her leg and foot. And I'm going over all of this because I really would like you to see if it is that you are interested in this aspect of the detailed work. Now I'm going over the soles of her feet. And you think about the soles of the feet, they don't feel the same as the skin, right, on the arm or what have you. They feel a bit smoother, you know, in the babies. So when I begin to pounce, I'm going to pounce more so with the small, with the soft wedge that I didn't rip. So I'll be using the sponge without creating, you know, texture. So I'm getting everywhere, making sure I'm taking my time, as you know, as you can see. Now we have toes here, of course, and the toes, if you want, you can provide a little bit of that added texture to give the doll what appears to feel like and resembles prints, you know, like the doll has toe prints. And I like to use, like I said, this tool because it's a bit I don't know, it kind of because it's even the I like it the way it gives that added little bit of texture onto the finger, onto the my words, onto the toes. I'm just making sure that I'm cleaning out any possible bit of pooling. You want to make sure that you get the varnish in between the toes as well, with a little bit, but that you get in there, because that's an area that, you know, can be overlooked. And the thing about missing an area, it's a possibility that the paint could peel. And since the varnish also provides UV protection, that area could possibly fade for any amount of sunlight that might be on the doll. Now on top of the toes, I'm using the textured wedge, but I'm not going over the nails with that. The nails, I'm just going to make sure to swipe just with the brush so that they will remain smooth. Now I'm going to pause the video and I will come back. I would like to varnish our baby Maggie on camera. I did both her legs already. So I'm going to take this off. And I'm going to start with her eyes. You know, I'm going to start with her eyes and her face. I'm going to go across her forehead, just above, like in the brow line area. Okay. And remember the head, because we're giving her hair, we're not varnishing the entire kit, right? Because if we did varnish where we apply hair, it would crack with the needle, and then she would look like she has dandruff or cradle cap or something else that we you know, something that we don't want. So now I'm just pouncing around softly. Well, not softly. I'm just pouncing around with our textured wedge. Okay. And I'm looking to be sure that there's no buildup in any of her creases. Because remember, our baby Maggie, she has a lot of creases. Because she's very expressive, right? So we want to do our best to clean up those creases. We varnish inside the nose, but we want to make sure that there's nothing building up in there because it will look untidy, right? So now I want to go across her mouth, well, her lip, above her lip, I mean, in that fulcrum area. I'm just taking my time, really, because I want to be certain that I get everywhere and I get it nicely. Okay. And then we want to make sure that we go in her mouth. Make sure that it goes on the upper, the hard palate, you know, the roof of the mouth, and that we just kind of brushing it around all in there. And we're getting in all on her lips, nicely around. And our Maggie, she has lips that have some nice bit of what would give texture. So what we're doing is we're just going to take our soft wedge and then we're going to pounce her lips. Kind of going inside the mouth and then just pounce. Okay? Because her lips have that nice bit of what I like to say the lining where you can see some elevation and, you know, depression. And so I like that. So we just went softly because we want the lips, although they have this elevation and softness, we want them to feel smooth, right? So now the other area that we're going to go is we're going to go under her lip and around in this area here. Make sure that we get everywhere. Because remember, the fingers, toes, lips, and nose, definitely, and the ears, definitely get a lot of attention because the lips or the face is where pacifiers often are used, and we want to be sure that the area is nicely protected, and we want to make sure there's no pooling here. Okay. And I'm gonna go under her chin, under her neck, where it meets the flange. That can be an area that people forget. So you got to be mindful that you get in there, right? And we pounce using the textured cosmetic wedge. Now, remember, with our Maggie, we did the the hairline, right? And so I want to go around very carefully around her hairline area. So I'm going around ever so carefully around what is to be her hairline. Now I'm not being overly, in a sense, anal about it, but I do want to be mindful because, again, if we root on top of varnish, the baby doll will look as though they have cradle cap, and that's not what we want. That's not what we want. So I am carefully going around where we used our Prismacolor pencils to kind of go around. So that we can get this area nice. Now we did part of her forehead, but we didn't do all of it. So we want to make sure that we get the area that we did not varnish. Okay. Now if you want it, it's, of course, your preference. You could use the smooth cosmetic wedge rather than the one that's adding texture to her face. But again, the texture is going to be smooth, not smooth. It's going to be a soft texture, not a harsh texture. Now we're going to go around, her sideburns, and then coming into her cheeks. Because remember, these chubby cheeks we didn't yet varnish, right? These cute chubby cheeks. Okay. And pouncing. Gonna do the other as well. So I'm going around what we consider the sideburn area. Then we're gonna go in her chubby cheeks, where we did not already varnish. And each kit, you may have a different, a somewhat similar way in which you varnish the face. And it just kind of depends a little bit on the features. So, okay, now remember we also left area above the ear and behind the ear that hair will not be, so we need to varnish that area. Okay. And that's kind of touching the ear. So we may as well kind of go in the ear a little bit since we're right here. In the ear nicely and around. Okay. Now I don't know about heat set varnish because I do hear heat set artists use the word varnish and prime and sealing interchangeably. So I don't know that they use separate mediums for that or not. I don't know. But as an air dry artist, we do use different mediums. To seal and to prime can be the same medium, but to varnish is different. So I want to get behind the ear nicely. Okay. And remember, okay, and remember we have this area here that we want to be certain that we varnish in here around the ear with a, okay, around that bit of hairline, because when you're styling the hair and you use distilled water, you know, what will happen if it's not varnished there, it will turn white until it dries again. And yeah, so that's not something that you want to occur. Now you may be thinking, well, what about the head? You're not varnishing the head where you're going to put the hair. No, I'm not. But what happens is it dries and cures. And once you put the hair, once you apply the hair, there's no worry about the paint lifting like that. Okay. Let's see a little bit. I need to change my cosmetic wedge. Okay. So I was just kind of wiping off, kind of flex. Because what happens is when you rip the cosmetic wedge, after a certain point, it can have like some particles that will come off from the wedge onto the kit, you know, because the varnish is somewhat sticky, you know, well, not sticky, but it will pull the the particles off of the wedge. So yeah, so we'll take the new one, or the other one that we had, the other half of that wedge, and we're gonna go around and the back of the ear. Now I hope that that everyone is watching from beginning to end, and that you are getting something out of this portion of the content. I know that long videos sometimes don't get as many views, or sometimes people may click out of the video at a certain point. Um, so I get it. The only thing is um, it's important content or important information I'm sharing. And, this is an open personal diary. So I'm keeping up with what I'm doing on Maggie. Okay. Now I want to go under. I'm going to go under her ear. Okay, down here on her neck. Okay. Be sure that I go under her neck over here too. You do want to get into the creases. You just don't want pooling in the creases. Now we're going around the hairline on the back of her head. And again, we're avoiding where hair will be applied. Going under the other ear, because we didn't do that area before. Okay. Now, here we will pounce and have her dry. Now we did all of our baby Maggie on her head that we are going to do. Now she does have the anatomically correct torso. Okay. I'm going to varnish her. However, I won't do it on camera because I would not want to be to be flagged or anything like that. So what I will ask that you do is to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Please do take a look at our shorts, the community post, okay? And please do leave some comments. Tell me what you think about this new setup. I will be applying another layer of the varnish on our baby Maggie. I probably will do 2 more varnishes, so that will make a total of 3. And I will pay particular attention once again to the fingers, toes, lips, and nose, as well as mm, um, her ears, the tips of the ears, around the ears, because those are areas again that will receive sometimes more handling between the pacifiers, dressing the dolls, interacting with the dolls. And depending on how much a person interacts with their dolls, that can increase the risk of some of the paint possibly coming off. So this is one reason that I like to do my very best to seal well and to varnish at least, really at least 2 to 3 layers, in hopes that that will really protect the kit so that your investment is protected and that there isn't any lifting. So I would like to Encourage you to enjoy your day, to stay safe, and to come back again real soon. Enjoy your day. Peace and blessings. Diva G's Reborns.